how we have even bigger problem than COVID, right? And that we need to understand or try to tackle it. Okay, so if you look at this, one of the main things that connecting is the COVID-19, because it has gone, even worse in during the pandemic, COVID-19, right? And it has even made it worse. It was already a very dangerous scenario previously, but COVID-19 even triggered it further, right? Next one, next slide, please. Yeah. So, oh no, please do one back. Yeah. So if you see what is the impact of mental health on your life, it actually reduces your lifespan by 10 to 20 years, right? So it does affect your overall life if your mental health is not good. Most of the time we are only worried about physical health. Next slide, please. And why it is important for overall ecosystem, because it has got a lot of economic cost, right? So I'm not going to the numbers, but these are the very significant numbers to be very focused about mental health scenario of our individual as well as population. Next slide, please. Now, so what I'm trying to do here is, mental health is a societal stigma, right? And often we do not talk about mental health as we talk about our physical health, right? Even as an adult, sometimes even we don't know we are going through the mental health episode, right? So what are the passive mechanisms that we have and we can develop, right? So that we know that there is a mental health urgency, right? And we need to, and we can only take care if we know about it, right? So please go to the next slide. So social media is one of the passive mechanism, right? Why social media? Nobody forces us to post on social media, right? You had a good Maggie in the last canteen yesterday. I posted it to my family and friends. Why? Because it made me happy. I wanted to express my feelings, right? Nobody is forcing me. So social media is one of the naturalistic setting, right? And in academic term, we call it self-disclosure. Next slide, please. So that's why I have chosen social media, because it gives you a very good passive scenario about mental health situation of population as well as individual at large. Fine. Next, please. Yeah. So there are many social media platforms like Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. For this study, I have to stick to the Twitter. Why Twitter? Because the Twitter is like highly used during pandemic, right? For all the purposes that I'll speak in coming slides. Next, please. Right. Yeah, please. So first question is there any association between mental health tweets and COVID-19 pandemic? Right. That's my first research question. Next. Then, what are the topics being discussed? Because you cannot be stressed only because you have a presentation right now. You can be stressed about many other things in your life, right? So we need to understand the entire ecosystem, and particularly in the context of the COVID-19, what were the major stressors, so that you know if there is a next pandemic, how to tackle that, right? Next question, please. Then, how do these content impact users' polarity in discussion, right? So you may not be equally worried for everything in your life. Right? So for example, what will be your next meal after the presentation? I'm not worried about that. Right? Okay? Yeah, please. So for that, our framework which I developed here is, so this is our overall analytical framework, right? And particularly what I'm pitching here is that we can use social media as a disease control. We can use social media as a monitoring tool, which is an academic term called nowcasting, right? And then of course social media as a contagion and vector. Overall, the entire discussion will be around the COVID-19 pandemic. And the theoretical lens that I'm using here is SOR theory. So SOR stands for Stimulus Organism Response. I'll explain what is it in the context of COVID-19 pandemic and mental health. Next slide, please. So for this, I have collected data from the Twitter, using Twitter Academic API. That is also one of the acknowledgement of Academic Research API. From January 2020 to July 22. And we have collected these many tweets like 232, 737. Then after pre-processing, these are the remaining numbers of tweets like 127735. Next slide, please. Yeah. And you know that data in real world, right? Whatever data science application you do, they are not clean, right? So you need to follow a method through which you can make your data usable for further analysis. So of course I have followed all the process that to be followed before I go to the actual analysis, like lemmatization, spelling correction or hashtag, wavelength removal, many other things, right? So there is a proper method is followed for the data cleaning, and then once I have cleaned data, move on to the next slide, please. So I'll discuss now one by one how do whether I got answer for my questions or not, right? So first question was whether is there any association between mental health related tweets and the COVID-19 pandemic, right? Next one, please. So if you Unfortunately, graph is not quite visible, but if you see, as the phase-wise pandemic was growing, like first phase, second phase, third phase, that is still going on. I don't know how many phases are remaining, and the number of tweets. So there was a huge spike around April 2020. All we know, we can never forget April 2020, right? Okay. So there was a huge spike, and as the vaccination came into the picture, more healthcare system were up, right? People started taking care, people got adopted, and then there was a decline trend. But you see there are many peaks as well, right? Because it was never completely over, right? It was still going on. Next, please. At the same time, if you look at the WHO timeline, right, there was a similar trend into the daily death as well because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Right? Okay. So this is my answer to my first question, that it depicts that you can very well do a nowcasting using social media about a particular scenario. So it is done in the literature for flu, Alzheimer, and many other discussions. Next, please. Then the next one was, like, we wanted to know what kind of topics were discussed during a pandemic on social media, right? Okay. So. For that, I have applied unsupervised machine learning algorithm, that is LDA, which you have large corpus of text to identify the hidden topics and themes, right? So for that, you need to first find out the optimal number of topics, and in that case, it is 30, right? I'm not sure why the graph is not quite visible. Next, please. Yeah. So if you see there were a lot of things that bothered people during the pandemic, right? And they were literally depressed, right? They were depressed about many things. They were looking for support. They were worried about their well-being, right? They were also worried about what will be the effect, and so on and so forth. So it is a very descriptive scenario. This is to the second answer to the second question. Now what we did further, but it is not sufficient, right? We have collected data on individual basis, right? So 127735, that tweets you have seen, that is from the individual. There's no replications, right? There's no duplicate. They are individual self-disclosed text. So further, for the answering to the next question, how it impacted users' polarity into the discussion, we went to the, there's two metrics called subjectivity and polarity, right? Subjectivity, if whether there is a person has given a strong opinion about a particular thing. In this case, it is mental health, right? During pandemic. Next slide, please. So if you see the theme identification, please go ahead. So it is a mixed method research design, right? Because you applied text mining or the social media analytics to get the major theme, right? But what does it mean? They need to perform qualitative process as well. Next point, please. So let's say if you get a topic like mental health, pandemic, impacts, crisis, the interpretation will be COVID pandemic like crisis impacts, mental health, right? Hence support is needed, which is very much true in our life. Next, please. Now we went further and we wanted to know what is the bigger chunk of the discussion, because we have billions of tweets, right? And there's thousands of people, millions of people are talking about mental health. Then what is the major topic thing that is emerging out of it, right? So at the individual level, we did this topic clustering, and then after topic clustering, we went to the individual themes based on the subjectivity and polarity. Next slide, please. Yeah. So hold up. So the first, if you look at this, as the pandemic, you have seen that there's a trend was down, up and down and up, right? So the positive sentiments, if you see, when the vaccines came into the picture, right? When there was lockdown were open, they were lifted, right? People started to go work from the office, right? So they started looking worried about their work and their education and so many other things, right? They wanted support, they wanted access. Next, please. So these were the positive sentiments. Whereas when the pandemic was very high, right, people were really worried about their health first. Then, right, what is the next thing that they needed? For example, their child. They were worried about their education and so many other things. Next, please. And when it was very high pandemic, right, when it was the beginning phase, right. So first it was classified typology based on the sentiment. The next was in stressing factors, right? So if you look at this, during the high pandemic days, right, people were really worried about their well-being, overall well-being. They were looking for help desperately on the social media, whether it is oxygen, whether it is a medicine, or any kind of support. Next, please. Next. Whereas in the when they subsidized the pandemic, right, and the trend got down, people started focusing on other aspects of their life. Like for example, people also started learning so many new things in pandemic. Do you remember cooking in the pandemic?
10 minutes,
right?
so hard.
Yeah. So I'll just conclude. Next. Yeah,
You can
so-
have another 1 minute.
Yeah, so my conclusion is like, based on this kind of passive mechanism, you can have a real-time monitoring system